Hi, Nick Biron from 360 Insights, and wanted to talk about something that I noticed online today, which was yet another major uh, retail, or actually this one happened to be a restaurant chain filing for bankruptcy. And what I'm finding is this is becoming the norm. Big major brand names that were once almost too big to fail are failing all the time. Whether it's major restaurants, major retail organizations, or major corporations, once pillars of industry are failing. And what I wanted to cover in today's video is kind of the anatomy of a failing business. There's a few core things that I have been seeing over the years that are really leading to these failing businesses. If you think about it, I'll use one core example before I get into some of these pointed items. Sears. Sears at one point in time was the epitome of just too big to fail. They were one of the biggest retailers in the country, if not maybe the world, and they were doing fantastic. But the very thing that really led to their success also led to their failure, where at one point in time they shifted away from their catalog sales and really focused on malls. And at that time, to them, they thought it was the best decision to make, which was focusing on their in-person retail locations at these malls. But we all know that that is what led to part of their failure. But what I also find is interesting is back in 1994, I believe it was, Sears decided to close the Sears catalog. And if you've ever looked at a Sears catalog, what's interesting is they're about 2 inches thick, and they really had built up a network of sellers, warehouses, and transportation where you can literally buy just about anything and have it delivered directly to your home. And they actually been doing it for over 100 years. Imagine, in the early excuse me, early 1900s or even late 1800s, you had the ability to buy something and have it delivered directly to your home. If that sounds familiar, it's because, well, that's Amazon. Amazon's model was you can literally go to their website, buy almost anything, and have it delivered directly to your home. And what I find is interesting is Sears closed in, I think it was late 1994 or 1993, excuse me. And Amazon started in mid 1994. It was like 7 months between the closing of the Sears catalog and Amazon starting. Just imagine that. Sears, their management was so close-minded on focusing on what makes the most amount of money that they completely ignored the internet. And what they did is they focused on the in-person brick and mortar, and at the same time, they saw the catalog as really just too much expense for them, and they cut it. Now again, internet was at its infancy stage, but again, Amazon started 7 months later. And look at Amazon where they are today. And what I find is that Sears had the infrastructure set up to literally dominate the internet. Had they had the foresight to think about the shift from not just have the in-person stores, but to the internet. And that ultimately probably what has led to their failure because they focused so much on the brick and mortar that they forgot about everything else. They forgot to innovate, they forgot to focus on the internet sales and so on and so forth. And now, they're not in existence anymore. So anyway, again, I want to focus on today's video on kind of the anatomy of a failing business. And again, there used to be the concept of too big to fail, but if you look at the Fortune 500 organizations and where they are, what the differences say from 10 years ago, it's dramatically different. If you look at, for example, since the pandemic and the top bankruptcies, they are literally businesses that were too big to fail and brands that we all, love, probably, frequent and fairly often, but yet they are all struggling. And it comes down to, in my opinion, a few core things that I've observed for them. The first one is leadership decisions in a bubble. And what I mean by that is what I typically find in some of these organizations, especially when they're too big to fail, or actually there's a lot of organizations that way, you have leadership that makes decisions without seeking outside opinion. They may, work within their own individual board or their executive leadership team, but the reality is that they keep that circle very, very close knit. And the challenge is when you make decisions in a bubble, you ignore all the outside factors that could potentially help impact your business, whether it's customers, the industry, what the competition is doing. They literally think they know better than anyone else and that the decisions that they're making are what's right for the business. And typically that's what starts it is you start making bad decisions and one bad decision leads to another one and another one. Next thing you know, you're almost too deep to dig out of your own hole. But there are other factors that actually start to contribute to this. One of them happens to be cost cutting. And cost cutting I see comes across a couple different ways. So the first one is typically marketing. I don't know why, but marketing seems to be one of the first departments that gets the axe when it comes to budgeting when an organization was struggling. And I'll be honest with you, that is one of the biggest mistakes you can make because marketing is what drives everything for the organization in terms of sales. They are the ones that drive the brand awareness. They get people to come to your website. They get people to come to your restaurant or to your store. They're the ones that help engage and make the sales process that much better. And they make sales that much better at their jobs. The reality is that marketing should be the last budget you cut because the minute you cut off marketing, you're literally cutting off the faucet of sales. Especially if you're a big retail organization, big corporation, big restaurant. The minute you cut off that funnel, it's almost like the beginning of the end because once you start cutting off that funnel, sales start to struggle. And then what happens is you get further and further down that hole. The other thing that I noticed, and this happens more within kind of, I'd say, retail settings, whether it's a retail or even a restaurant where they start to cut inventory but raise costs at the same time. So, what I mean by this is that major retailers will cut inventory where they won't have as much on hand and people will go in. So, for example, you go into a store and you're looking for a pair of pants or a shirt, whatever it might be, and you go in and they don't have your style anymore or they don't have your size. Well, this isn't 20 years ago. This isn't like where, people are like, I'll just come back again. The reality is well, you have malls and you have other stores, so they can literally walk right out, go to the next location, and maybe find what they're looking for. But more likely than not, what's happening is they're going to Amazon. If they don't find what they want, and I've done this personally where I've been into a Home Depot and Lowe's and they didn't have what I want, go straight to Amazon and they have exactly what I want. I can get it delivered tomorrow. Well, that's a problem because if you literally have people that can go on their phones and order something within seconds and you don't have that inventory on hand, again, that's a lost sale. You will not recoup that business. And I know it's easier said than done because inventory costs money, but the reality is how much is the lost sale cost to your business when they go either to a competing store or they go right on Amazon and don't come back into your store. In restaurants, it could be you're cutting people's favorite dish. And again, if you're going into a restaurant and you happen to want a dish that you typically get and they don't have it anymore. Or what's worse is I start to see cost cutting where they actually use inferior ingredients and your favorite dish is either not there or it doesn't taste the same. And then on top of that, you couple, for example, increased pricing. And I know restaurants have been struggling with this quite a bit. But the reality is that when someone walks into your store or your restaurant, and you either don't have what they're looking for or they have what you're looking for, but it's a much more inferior quality what they once had. Well, that's one thing. But then you couple on top of that an increased pricing. Well, they can only tolerate that so much because again, there's competition literally right next door to you or online that is so much more happy to take that business and maybe they're keeping their pricing the same. Maybe they're keeping their quality up, whatever it might be. And it doesn't take that much to lose a customer these days. There's just so much competition out there. And then finally, when it comes down to it, the last thing is innovation. And this even gets to a little bit of the Sears concept of earlier, where what I find is that companies that struggle, they start failing to innovate. And what they do is they start focusing on all those other things. They cut marketing, they figure out ways to cut cost, lower inventory. Maybe they think that they will save them as if they increase the pricing, and they don't think about, you know, 5 feet down the road and start innovating about what potentially could be next. And I use Sears example because again, they had the Sears catalog, they had the infrastructure set up to support this nationwide uh, network of being able to deliver something to someone's house within days, if not, a little bit more time back then. And they just literally cut that cost. But even further on, as things started to progress and Amazon started to basically kick everyone's butt, Sears really didn't look towards the internet. They didn't look at innovating. They actually didn't really do much innovation inside the stores. They let the store deteriorate, and you see this with a lot of organizations today, where they don't think about what's next, how to innovate, what is their competition doing, what do the customers want, and that is, I think, kind of the final nail in the coffin when you start to couple everything together. The reality is that again, competition is right there. It's either on the phone or it's in the store right next door. So again, just in summary, and again, a little bit longer video than I like to traditionally do, but this isn't just for restaurants, retail organizations, and major corporations. Any business can really think about this in terms of when you start to struggle, couple things. Decisions in a bubble. That is probably the worst thing that you can do. Listen to your customers, listen to your employees, look at what the competition's doing. Seek outside opinion, whether it's an analyst firm like 360 Insights, if you're a software company, but go and find these outside perspectives because you are not the smartest person in the room. Your customers are, and a lot of the times your employees are. They know what's going on, and the first thing you can do is by seeking that outside help, you can start to find things like innovation, which I talked about last, but it can really turn into innovating ideas that can really help generate business for your organization. It can generate excitement. It can get your customers more engaged. There's so much good that can happen by just seeking input from other areas besides your close network of people. The second thing is, again, don't look at marketing to cut cost. The reality is that marketing and probably even sales as well are your two most important aspects to getting your business on track. And the reality is that if you start cutting that marketing budget, your competition isn't. So your brand awareness is going to go away, and that foot traffic that comes along with the brand awareness is going to go down as well. And then it's just going to make your sales teams jobs that much more difficult. They're not all rainmakers. They don't just make business happen, fall right out of the sky. Marketing is a major component of that. And then when you start to look at kind of your stores or your inventory, whatever it might be, really think about, because cost cutting I know is important, but what you want to try to do is find metrics of cutting costs that don't impact the customers. Because the minute you start impacting the customer experience, they're going to go away. Because friction is only, how do I put this best? Customers will only allow so much friction before they go online. I actually wrote an experience about I had with Staples not too long ago where I was looking for a simple office chair, but man, they made it such a difficult buying process that the result was I went someplace else. I'm not alone, and your competition is only they're clicks away. It's so much easier to win that business. So really focus on you can focus on cost cutting, but nothing that impacts the customer experience. And I always recommend shying away from price increases unless it's absolutely 100% necessary. But keep it in line. Look at what your competition's doing. If you find that your prices are above your competition, but your quality or your customer experience is lower, you're going to lose. You are not going to win that battle. So anyway, another one of my videos, I apologize. I feel like I might be ranting a little bit in this video, but I really, again, I'm here. We want to help businesses. And these are very common things that I've seen in businesses of all shapes and sizes that end up not making it or struggle to become successful. Hope this video is helpful and thank you.